Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. For 3 decades, today's guest has done exactly that. She carved her own path and has truly been a trailblazer, reporting from the front lines of battlefields, disasters, and defining moments that shaped our times. She has spent a lifetime asking difficult questions, giving a voice to people the world may otherwise never have heard. It is that one voice that has become one of the most defining in Indian journalism world over. Admired by many, questioned by some, ignored by no one. For 31 years, she has given us a sense of the world. Hopefully today, we get a sense of the person she is from the other side. It is my privilege to welcome the one and only Barkha Dutt. Welcome, Barkha.
Thank you so much, and thank you for a lovely introduction.
Thank you for giving us your time. Barkha, before I deep dive, getting to know the personal side of your journey, I want to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
You have pretty much dominated our television screens, now our mobile screens, social digital media reasonably, with breaking stories and headlines. Why do we know so little about Barkha the person?
Because Barkha the person has been pretty much obsessed with Barkha the professional. The separations aren't that distinct. It's also the nature of my work and how I feel for it. I think that there are a lot of people who lead more conventional, structured lives where they have a work life and then they have a personal life. I think in my case, I am extremely defined by my passion for my work, and therefore what you know is mostly my work.
So pretty much what we see is what we get?
I would say that what you see of me on camera is not very different from how you'd find me in real life.
Okay. So then the segue to the beginning of my questions, yeah? Would you take us back, Barkha, to those early childhood days when you were growing up? What were your social, cultural, religious, even political influences that have gone on to shape the person that you are today?
So I grew up between two cities, New Delhi and New York. Okay. My father worked with Air India at the time, and my mother was a journalist with the Hindustan Times. And at one point, my father got transferred to New York with Air India, and my mother took leave from Hindustan Times and worked with the United Nations for a while. And so we shuttled between both cities, did some years of our schooling in New York, spent the rest of our life in Delhi, my sister and I, and my father and mother.
And it's an older sibling?
It's a younger sibling, Bahar. And my father's elder brother, who never got married, who was like a grandfather figure, Tayaji to us, he lived with us in Delhi, but not in New York. So we grew up between these cities. And what were the influences that shaped me? I would say I was entirely shaped, frankly, by my parents. My mother was a journalist, and she was a journalist at a time when there were hardly any women in journalism. There were no television channels then, no digital platforms, just newspapers. And I grew up on these stories of, you know, how she had to fight to get what she wanted to, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more later. My father was a very different sort of man. I mean, when my mother died when I was 13 years old, he raised us as a single father. And the freedom he gave to his daughters, it was an inherent liberalism of his way of thinking.
And at that time.
I think these were my influences, the books they gave us to read, how they packed so many things into our early years, you know, classical dance, music lessons, drama, summer school. If you lived in New York, you still had to learn Hindi and take your exams in the school back home, right? We were not allowed to become people who forgot our roots.
And that takes effort.
And I think that's what shaped me.
Yeah. So then I want to start with your mom.
Yeah.
Because we do know, and what we know of her is that Prabha Dutt.
Yes.
An award-winning journalist, perhaps the first woman war correspondent?
Not perhaps. Actually, India's first woman to report a war was my mother.
And quite a rebel in her time in 1960s, would you say? Is that a right description?
It's so interesting because so many people know me from my frontline reporting of the Kargil war. They think that I was the first woman to report a war.
That's what one perceives as.
So let me tell you a little bit about my mother. My mother, Prabha Dutt, before marriage, Prabha Behel, went to the Hindustan Times as a straight out of Punjab University to apply for a job. And the editor told her that there are no jobs for women. The only thing you can get to do is to cover the flower shows in the city.
Oh dear.
And she said, I'll take whatever you're giving me and I'll prove myself. And she went on to become the head of the bureau in the Hindustan Times. She later worked with India Today for a while. And she was one of India's foremost investigative reporters. In fact, these recent Netflix series that we have seen made around these child killers called Billa Ranga. So the Black Warrant looks at them, RAK looks at them.
Yes.
My mother petitioned India's Supreme Court for the right to interview them before they were hanged. And the case is called Prabha Dutt versus Union of India. So she was that sort of fighter. She got the chance to interview them. So she's really gone. She did. And so she was the journalist who interviewed these killers before they were executed. Now, in terms of being India's first woman war correspondent, so she'd fought to get all these opportunities and proved herself. But of course, this was, the 1960s. A war breaks out between India and Pakistan in 1965. And she goes to her editor and she says, I'd like to go and cover this war. And he says, it's out of the question. We can't send a woman to the war front. So she says, if you're not going to let me cover the biggest story that there is, can I please take a few days leave? And he gives her those few days leave. She takes a notepad and a pen because those are pre-camera days, right? There are no video cameras, there's no TV channels.
No mobile phones to cover on the
She had a cousin in the army. She went alone to the Punjab border, alone, with a notepad and a pen. I have some photographs of her from the war front. She's wearing a sari and covering a war in a immaculately sort of draped sari with a helmet on her head. It is iconic. And for me, that's the story I wish I could tell more people. And I'm grateful to you to be able to talk about it through this podcast, because then what happened was she started sending these dispatches back to the newspaper. She was like, okay, you didn't send me, but here are my stories. And they were too good not to be published, so they published her stories.
This is like a true rebel.
Rebel.
You don't give me what I want, I'll get it.
True rebel. And so, I think my trailblazing path is nothing compared to her and the women of her generation. They opened doors for us. They made it possible for us to fight the battles we did. And so, yeah, absolutely, that was her story. India's first woman war correspondent.
What part of her personality are you most influenced by?
I think that I have genetically inherited both her good and bad, so to speak, in the sense that she was... I have this obituary that Khushwant Singh wrote for her when she died. He was her editor at one point for a long time. And he spoke about how she felt everything very intensely. She fought for everything she believed. But because she felt so intensely, there was a line in that I can never forget, which said that every outburst of anger was followed by a cascade of tears. And that's, I think, very much me. I think that's very much me, that I'm a big fighter, but it's not that I like fighting, right? So I know that I have to fight for a lot of things for myself, for equality, for assertion. But because it takes so much out of you, it can be emotionally exhausting.
Of course.
So I think I inherited her rebellious streak, her passion, her curiosity, but also somewhere a little too much intensity.
Which I think is a good thing, because at least you have something that people can relate to.
So it's great in terms of connecting with people, but it is emotionally depleting. It can exhaust you. So I think my mother was very much like that. I think I'm very much like that also.
But Barkha, of the words that come to mind when one talks about you, I have to say the word fearless is something that I would associate almost parallelly or shadowing your professional journey. How do you see yourself in that word?
If I saw myself as fearless, I'd have to be the most pompous person on this planet.
No, but you can be honest.
No, I'll be honest. I'm brave, yes. I'm not fearless. I think these are two completely different things. I think courage is managing fear. It's not the absence of fear.
How beautifully said.
Nobody is without fear. Nobody is without fear. So I think bravery is about finding a way that when you're in a difficult situation, a life and death situation, a war zone, and I've been in multiple war zones, a natural calamity, an earthquake, a tsunami, a riot, all of these sort of very, very intense life and death situations. How do you manage fear? And I think you manage fear either by the pursuit of survival, because a lot of these difficult situations require you to be alert enough to actually get out alive. I have been in situations where bombs have fallen at my feet, where I've had to hide in underground bunkers to escape billowing clouds of smoke that have come from literally rockets falling 2 meters away from me. And I'm not talking about like back in the day. I have repeatedly been in war zones. I have repeatedly been in extremely, extremely critical situations. Now, is it that I'm so brave that I feel no fear? It is not possible to feel no fear. But I think what you do is you substitute adrenaline, focus, survival, and you postpone the fear. And you say, right now, I'm going to let another emotion overtake me. And that emotion is, how do I report this story? Logistics. People don't understand that journalism in these situations is 80% logistics. So, when I went to report the Kargil war, it was 1999, and it was before the age of broadcast vans and live uplinks. There was no live broadcasting.
Right.
So we used to film on tape. It was a pre-digital age. And now we used to film on tape, and we didn't know how to get these tapes back to Delhi. So we would walk miles because our driver had run away, our car had been bombed. We would walk miles to find the next spot from where helicopters were taking off, carrying coffins of soldiers back home. And we would beg the chopper pilot, can you take our tapes?
And deliver.
Where do you get your next meal from? How do you go to the loo when there are no loos, right? Where do you hide? What do you do when there's no transport? How are you going to be cogent in that time? And oftentimes you feel that what you're in is larger than you. And when you feel that what you're in is larger than you, it takes over your fear at that time. The instinct to survive, but also the instinct to tell the story, because there are no take-twos.
Absolutely.
In these situations. I look at my old footage from the Kargil war, and there's one part where I have somebody has put glucose on, because I was about to faint. So somebody has put glucose powder on my face, and I'm actually looking at camera and I have all this glucose powder on my face, and it's not a sanitized situation. I have spoken like that. I'm looking bedraggled. There isn't a spot of makeup on my face. The first time I hear a Bofors gun behind me, I jump. It's how the footage went.
Yeah, and the sense of duty is so heightened that nothing else matters.
And then later, when you get out of that situation and you look back, it does, every such experience adds a layer of vulnerability to you somewhere inside, right? It scars you, it shapes you, it strengthens you. It never weakens you, but it impacts you.
Of course. So, Barkha, then the next question is really about just this, that when you have spent pretty much most part of your life standing beside people in their worst days.
Yeah.
One day became your worst day when you lost your father while you were still reporting from the front lines of the pandemic. How did you process your grief?
I think I'd have to say that I still haven't processed my grief. So for context, my father was my only parent for most of my life. I lost my mother when I was 13, and my father brought me and my sister up. And reporting the COVID pandemic, I would say, was like reporting a war. It was a time when, by then I had gone independent. I had started my own media company, Mojo Story. Mojo means magic. I was determined to bring back the magic of storytelling. And literally, I launched the company, and 3 months or 4 months later, the pandemic happened. And I committed the next 2 years of my life. I traveled to every part of this country, while some of the biggest sort of channels weren't putting boots on the ground. I was out there when migrant workers were walking hundreds of kilometers back home. I was walking on the highways with them. When oxygen ran out in the cities, I was there. I was inside the ICUs of hospitals. I was hugging old women at railway stations who'd been abandoned. So COVID, I had become the COVID reporter at that time. And then I became the story I was reporting. Like everything I had reported as applied to other people happened to my father. Whether it was him getting COVID, whether it was me having to use a lot of my personal goodwill to try and get him a hospital bed, There were no ambulances. The ambulance I got, the oxygen cylinder didn't work in it. By the time he reached the hospital, he was much worse. I had been with strangers inside ICUs, but when it came to my own father, I wasn't allowed in. As a reporter, I could go in. Here's the irony, but as a daughter, I wasn't allowed in because we forget those times when you had to just, and I had to just leave my father there and come away and, the next time I saw him, he was on a ventilator. And that time I begged the doctor that, can I please at least go and have 5 minutes with my father? And I would say that I lived with my father till I was 40 years old. And we lived with a bathroom corridor separating us. And he was such a big part of my life, of who I am, of who I could become, that for 5 years, I was not able to step into the room, which was his. And I think a few months ago, I went up the steps in our family home to his room for the first time, and I could barely sit there for 30 seconds before running out, because spaces are memories. And if you ask me how have I processed it, I would say that I am utterly broken in indescribable ways by that loss. And I think anyone who tells you that grief fades and it gets better with time, it doesn't get better with time. It gets worse with time, because the world moves on and you're still stuck in that same space. Yeah. But do I soldier on? Of course I soldier on. Do I carry pain in my heart? I would say at all times. I think there's pain in my heart at all times.
I'm so sorry if I've got touched upon, but gracious of you to share this, really. So, Barkha, having to carry this pain in your heart somewhere also talks about some kind of strength, resilience that one could easily describe you. When you've always been the strong one, is it difficult to allow yourself to be the person that needs holding?
Yes and no. I think there's a contradictory streak in me there. I think I try and be very self-contained. I try and not need people. I try and say that it is, I have to find reserves within.
Does it work all the time?
It doesn't work all the time, because then sometimes when you do trust and you do get attached, possibly it's disproportionate, because it's so rare to allow yourself to do that. And so I think then maybe some people can get spooked by my intensity, because it is very intense. So I think I have that dysfunctionality in me.
But has it gotten any better with time? Have you been able to kind of share space?
I think the great thing about time and getting older is that you just become more and more and more comfortable in your own skin.
That's true.
And I know so many women, I'm 54 years old. Age is just a number, it's an irrelevance. But the only way in which it is relevant, is that I never gave a shit about what people thought. But if you ask me at 54, do I even think about it for 1 second? Do I read some comment by some troll? Do I care that somebody said something behind? I couldn't give a damn. And I think that sort of absolute freedom from other people's opinion of you, that is a beauty of age. It is a beautiful thing.
I completely second it. But I have to say the only difference is that I care too much about what people thought of me, what they'd say about me.
It's a useless thing.
Until I turned 50. Now I'm 55. And I cannot tell you the sense of liberation that I feel, because now it just doesn't matter.
So I, maybe, unlike you, was always a rebel. But so many women who have spent their lives imprisoned by this idea of how they're seen by the world suddenly find their liberation in midlife.
Yeah. And I think women in 50s are a hell of a lot more fun.
Oh my God, so much fun.
3 decades of witnessing humanity at its best and at its worst.
So,
what truths about people do you hold today that perhaps you didn't when you started?
That people can be extraordinarily strong, extraordinarily humane, extraordinarily brave, and then they can be extraordinarily depraved. And that contradiction of the human condition, I saw it in the pandemic when I was traveling all across India. I remember meeting this old man who had devoted his life to burying and cremating those who did not have anybody when they died. That was his life.
Yeah.
His life was just that there are people who die without families. And whether they're Hindu or Muslim, I am going to go and bury them or cremate them because they don't have anybody but me. So I've seen that kind of kindness. I have seen I don't know. I've seen parents survive without their children who've been brutally taken away from them. I have seen that kind of strength. And then we have, of course, seen absolute depravity. We have seen violence and abuse against women. I mean, I think I have seen the full spectrum of what human beings are capable of, the greatness and the awfulness. And I think the human condition is both, right?
Yeah,
It's
you live in
both.
contradiction.
To live in contradiction.
Clearly, in your 31 years of career, you have interviewed extraordinary people. Any ordinary woman that you've met and you've not forgotten?
So many. I met a woman in her 80s from Pune who goes out and she does this sort of acrobatic dance to earn money. She's a poor woman,
Street performer.
street performer.
Okay.
And she's in her 80s. And she said that I will do this because I will not beg. I
Wow.
will not beg.
Well done.
I will not be dependent and I will earn my own living. I met an idli seller, a woman from Coimbatore, who's called Idli Amma, who she's in her 90s. She's been selling idlis in a street kiosk for 1 rupee for the last, I don't know how many decades. Again, she's like hunched over, can barely walk, but she's there being independent. Neither has had the benefit of education, neither comes from a privileged background. Extraordinary stories. I have met this wonderful woman called Meghna Girish, whose son was in the military and he lost his life in the line of duty. And Meghna Girish, her daughter-in-law, because the husband died, she encouraged her to get married again and became her best friend, right? And then I remember in COVID, outside a railway station in Mumbai, outside the Bandra railway station, I met a woman called Leelavati and she was sitting there alone outside the station. The station doors were locked and I found her sitting on the street and I said, "Why are you here?" And she said, "Well, I've been thrown out of my house by my children because it was COVID, people's economic livelihood was impacted." She had nowhere to go. She was just sitting there and I said, her husband had died and I said, "Where are you going?" And she said, "Can you get me on a train to Delhi? Because, I said, "Why Delhi? What are you going to do?" She said, "I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's the city I used to live in with my husband. I came to live with my children, but they threw me out of the house." And I did that story and it caused such a national outpouring of support. People came forward. They wanted to give her a home.
Oh, wonderful.
But I just remember, when I close my eyes, I sometimes
women.
still think these are the women who stay with me.
You also gave us a national motto, so to speak, with Dil Mange More.
Yeah.
Which means the heart desires more.
Yes.
What is Barkha's heart desire more of?
So let's first tell the story of Ye Dil Mange
Sure,
More,
please.
because there's an entire generation that only knows the story of Vikram Batra through the movie Sher Shah.
That's right.
Vikram Batra was one of the many soldiers that I met at the war front, and I interviewed him. I was 26 and a half years old when I went to Kargil, and most of the soldiers I was meeting were 24, so we were roughly the same age. And while all the male reporters were more interested in the hardware and the guns and the rockets, I was really interested, like you asked me about fear, I would ask them about fear. So I had asked Vikram, who just come down from a successful mission, and I met him at the base of these mountains, and I have this photograph with him, which is one of my most cherished possessions, where he, me, and a bunch of other soldiers were sitting around, and all the boys are looking at some old Cosmopolitan magazine, and we're having chai from a chipped glass. And then I said, "Sir, when you go up the mountain to
Right.
possible death, aapko dar nahi lagta? Like, how do you process the fact that you might be marching to your death?"
That's right.
And he threw his head back and he laughed and he had this twinkle that went up to his eyes and he said, "Ye dil mange more." And Ye Dil Mange More was a Pepsi Cola slogan at that time. Nobody now associates it with Pepsi. Then after that interview, it became what I call a national motto. You asked me, "Mera dil kya mangta hai?" What does my heart seek more of? I think my heart seeks more of adventure, experience, the next great story. But I also want to venture into different kinds of storytelling. I want to make movies. I want to make
Lovely.
yeah, I really want to make a great film. I want to make movies. Like, I think that's my next thing.
And you should, because I think there's so much that you've done
Yeah.
that you could just
Yeah.
work from. And
my next unfulfilled dream is like, if I hadn't been a journalist, I would have been a lawyer. And I keep thinking that I should still take my law exam because I don't believe that it's ever too late to pursue your dream. So it's not to give up this to become that, but like, that's something I miss. Like, I miss the idea of being in a courtroom arguing.
or just perhaps make a movie of a trial.
Yeah, or
that
something.
serves both.
Or something.
If you were reading your biography,
Yes.
under the chapter of my aha moments, what would we be reading?
I mean, my aha moments would all be professional. My aha moments.
Come on, give us something.
What is aha moment?
A moment that that has given you such a high
Yeah.
that it has stayed with you.
Of course, you remember little things like I went to modern school in Delhi, and we had this custom. I don't know if schools still have it. That on Teachers' Day on 5th September, you had to dress up as your teacher. And I was the headmistress of the school for one day, and she was one terrifying lady called Mrs. Juginder Singh or whatever. And so I had to be Juggi, as we used to call her. So I draped myself this sari and wore the kind of glasses that she wore. And you had to address the school assembly as the headmistress.
God, really?
So I mean, I think that was a great aha moment. I think, you know, the first time I went up on stage and spoke on a mic was a great aha moment.
What age were you then?
I was speaking from 10, 11, 12. I was just like, I think I was made to be on a stage to talk to people. Like, I mean, but of course, no one's made to be like that. I think my parents nudged me, gave me books to read, gave me that articulation, gave me that confidence. So those were aha moments. That's something I miss in my life. I learned classical dance for 16 years, and somewhere along the way I gave it up. So
Really?
I was an Odissi dancer, and I gave that up because I danced till I was in college. So, you know, I think those are the little things that I keep thinking I want to go back to dancing.
Yeah.
I want to go back to dancing.
Don't you feel like pursuing?
I do, but like, there's just so much in my life at all times that, you know, but these are early aha moments.
I'll tell you, we would pay to watch Barkha Dutt.
Well, I don't know how I would dance today, but like, I used to love that, you know, so those kind of things, I guess.
Your platform, We the Women.
Yeah.
You've talked about it by saying that it's all about community, conversations, and celebrations.
Yeah.
Our podcast from the other side
Yeah.
is an humble effort at
Yeah.
highlighting.
It's a great
the
name,
extra.
by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. It's our pursuit to bring the extra out in the ordinary that we see about women
Yeah.
and celebration of women.
Yeah.
For a moment, if we were to converge the two worlds,
Yeah.
what lies on the other side for women today, do you believe?
I think that I've always been stunned by how universal the tales of women are. There is something so universal that binds the stories of women. So while across ages, across regions, across classes, of course, some of us are more privileged than other women.
Yes.
There are women who are fighting to put 2 square meals on the table, protecting their children from possibly alcoholic, wastrel partners. They have very different struggles from somebody like me who can, you know, who has the privilege to raise other issues. But if you take away that for a moment, sometimes I've gone into like rooms full of women where I'm addressing them, and I start with a little experiment and I say, how many women here are carrying the regret of unfulfilled dreams? And literally in every room, 90% of women have raised their hands. And I believe that the greatest thread that unifies this experience of being female is the trap of sacrifice.
Yes.
So many women, young, old, aging, are still sacrificing.
In varying degrees, but the sacrifice.
And I always say, I'm going to say something controversial, but I'm going to say it because I believe it. Please, women have to learn to be selfish.
Yes.
Women have been so conditioned to be sacrificing.
Yes. And celebrated for being that.
And romanticized and
Yes.
complimented for giving up parts of themselves for their husbands, for their children, for their parents, that they think that that's what they're meant to be. And the number of women who have had to put aside their dreams
Yes.
to be these sacrificial creatures that they think they're supposed to be It is astonishing. You can talk to an 18-year-old and you can talk to an 80-year-old, and that conditioning is so deep that they will put a bit of themselves back to enable somebody else. Right. And I am constantly saying to young girls, to older women, to women my age, be selfish. Put the I before the we, at least sometimes in your life.
No, and I think if I can just second what you're saying, because I come from a geography where we are about 190 odd nationalities. Because of what I do with my podcast, I have the opportunity to sit across women from various cultural backdrops. And you couldn't be more right. That if there is a single thread that runs through, no matter what age, no matter what caste or what nationality that you are, what language you speak, sacrifice seems to have been gratified by virtue of a woman making it. And at the cost of herself, when she's making the sacrifice, everyone's like, sure, what a wonderful mother, what a wonderful wife, what a wonderful daughter. And then you come to a point where you are so exhausted that you can't even see what's left within you. And I think it's so important to be selfish.
I 100% agree.
When you're not facing the camera, tell us, what do you do?
I watch murder mysteries like an addict. I think I must have watched every murder mystery made in any part of the world, from like Scandinavian crime drama to British crime drama to American crime drama. I really want to write a book and create a female detective character. Like, that is my other dream, that I want to be like. But like, I have this vision of like, if I hadn't been this, I had been that. Oh, it would be so exciting to be a spy.
Or a detective.
To be a spy or a detective. I'm very hooked onto that kind of fiction. I read, not as much as I'd like to. I still have more books on my shelf than I've actually read.
What are you reading currently?
I've just come back from London and I picked up like 7 female authors, none of whom I've ever even heard of, and I've brought them back. I read a lot of non-fiction, more non-fiction now, and I read a lot of female authors, so anything really. But crime is my favorite. Yeah. And then nothing, I mean, I have cats. How
many do you have?
I have 3 cats. And I'm, used to be a dog person. Now I'm a cat person. I love animals. I'm very, very family oriented. My father and mother are no longer alive, but my sister, my cousins. I trust and spend time with friends who knew me from before I was a public person, because I feel that they knew a part of me that, I feel their friendship is more authentic.
Are they very critical as well of what?
Often they laugh at me a lot. They make fun of me. They don't take me seriously. They think I take myself too seriously. They don't hesitate to criticize me. I know it's a safe space. I do like to keep an open home where people I love can come by anytime, and have a meal. I travel. I tend to keep going back to the same places.
Like which ones?
So we now do We the Women in London.
Yes.
We also, for the last 3 years before the war happened, had We the Women in Dubai with the Khalij Times. We have We the Women in Mumbai. So like, if I go to London for We the Women, then I will stay back 10 days. I grew up in New York. I studied in New York. So I tend to go back to New York. So I'm a little bit because I'm such an adventure seeker in my professional life. In my personal life, I tend to be a person of habit. I want to do the same things over and over and over again.
Familiarity.
Yes, because the professional life is so unpredictable. It takes me to so many crazy places, that my personal spaces tend to be very repetitive and very like the same. I want to eat the same food. I want to, I want to go to the same restaurant. I want to go to the same cities. I want to meet the same people. So that's a contradiction.
That makes sense. 30 years from now.
Yeah.
If one was to remember Barkha beyond a journalist, what would you like them to remember about you?
I think I would want to be remembered as somebody who made it possible for other women to believe that anything is possible. Because what has been most meaningful in my life, other than the excitement or the satisfaction of telling a story from a situation that nobody else or very few other people are going to, is when a young girl will walk up to me somewhere in some part of the world. And it has happened to me in COVID, it has happened to me in war zones. There are people, strangers, who've come to hug me and they've cried on my shoulder saying, I lost my father too in COVID, or I was 12 years old when I saw this story that you did, and that's when I decided that I can do this and I'm no longer going to do this. And so I think the person I want to be remembered as is someone who opened doors for other women.
For others. Incredible. And I think that's so powerful. 3 lessons, Barkha, that you could share that no one would learn in a classroom. Life, journalism.
The first lesson is authenticity. I think we live in an age of Instagram where everybody is like trying to be like everybody else. You know, if you do a doom scroll on Instagram, actually the sameness of it is so suffocating. Like at times it's boring because honestly, either everyone's trying to look like everybody else or everybody's trying to sound like everybody else. It's just like this homogeneity. And I'm like, where is authenticity, right? And in the end, even as a professional, in any space, not just in media, you have to be yourself. Who are you is often the toughest question for anybody to ask of themselves and answer honestly. Yes. So I think my big life advice, if I can be so pompous as to give such a thing, is be authentic to yourself. Because if you're not happy, if you're not true to yourself, trust me, you are not going to be a source of happiness to anybody else. Right. So one is authenticity. 2, live a fuller life. Live a full life.
What does that mean?
That means that every minute counts. Every minute can be a learning, can be a source of joy, can be a felt moment. Don't just go through life in a slightly detached way. One, life is not infinite, it is short.
Yes.
And therefore take everything, like literally grab everything from it that you can. And 3, find a purpose. Yeah. It can be your purpose. It doesn't have to be someone else's idea of purpose. But every day when you get up, what is your purpose? I think these 3 things.
Well said. If 20-year-old Barkha just walked in and sat here opposite you, what do you think she would recognize in the woman that you are today?
I mean, in some ways, I'm totally unchanged. Both the good and the bad, right? Like, because what happens is that external age is always more than internal age.
Yes.
I don't feel older.
Yeah.
I don't
either feel when I say I'm 55, they're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
But in my head, I am young.
18 till you die, like as the song goes.
Normal.
Normal, very normal. I think the only thing that the 54-year-old Barkha is different from than the 20-year-old Barkha is that living life makes you challenge some textbook positions. So when you're young and you're having these college debates with your friends, you have very, very fixed views. This is what I think about this. This is what I think about this. This is my brand of feminism. This is what I think of. Then you live life. Yeah. And you find that life, the way you react to actual experience is not black and white. Correct. Life is full of grays. Life is not certain. How you respond is not certain. What you think you will never accept, you can accept. What you thought that you will always accept suddenly feels suffocating. Lived life teaches you to never say the following thing: I will never do this. No.
Yeah.
Life will teach you that you will do so many things that you thought you would never do.
I had read something that stayed with me for a long time, and it is simply this: that confessions are often avoidance of change, right? So we often slot ourselves and say, but I am so like this. So then you'll only live in that myopic vision of life. Right?
Yes.
I have you here, so I can't but let you go off without getting one soundbite in terms of the current geopolitical situation, particularly in the region that I am coming from.
Yeah.
What's your take as a journalist on that?
Look, the answer to this question tends to change at the time that you ask, right? So, I spent some time in Dubai at the height of the conflict, and I was very impressed with how the government there was responding to keep a sense of normalcy. The alerts on the phones were immaculate, right? When there was incoming fire, all of that. And that urge to give citizens the sense that you can still carry about your day-to-day life.
And the leadership coming
into the malls and setting that example. So all of that was very impressive. But of course, everybody knows that there is a great economic consequence to this conflict, which touches not just the UAE or West Asia or the Gulf countries. It touches us here in India.
Yes, and felt that impact. Yes,
and it is a war and it is a conflict that impacts us all. It is the free passage of of ships through the Strait of Hormuz,
Yes.
which I had the opportunity to go to the very
And
edge
report from there.
and
We
report
saw
from
that,
there.
yes.
The free passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz is extremely critical for the world economy.
That's right.
And it impacts us all. And I think all I can hope for is that this stabilizes. But at the time that we're talking,
Yeah, it's
we have
ever-changing.
again we have again stepped back.
Step back, yeah.
We have again seen that hope for a truce be damned right now, right? So the answer to this question, if you'd asked me this 1 month ago, I would have said the worst is over.
Yeah.
Now I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the hope that we are all
But we
really
hope.
clinging on to.
But we all hope.
Last two questions.
Yeah.
What are your 3 non-negotiables that you practice every single day?
I think my first non-negotiable is that I will not let the voices of other people define my voice.
Wouldn't expect anything else, Barkha, from you.
That's a very important non-negotiable, because as a public person, everybody has an opinion on me and they often express it to me in my comments or, whatever. And I have to, I've cited this example before, but it's a great example, so let me share it. I was once interviewing Hillary Clinton and she was still Secretary of State in America, and she said to me something that I'll never forget. And she said, if you want to be a successful, independent woman, you have to learn to have a skin as thick as the hide of a rhinoceros. And I had to train myself that I will not respond to people leaving random criticism. I will not respond. I will not let myself be undermined by other people's negativity.
Good on you. Yeah.
It's okay. You don't like me. I'm okay with that. I don't have to spend the rest of my life with you. Don't like me. It's
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Right? So, which is not to say that I disrespect my audience or I disregard my audience. It just means that you have to find your own voice and your own personality. So my non-negotiable is I will not let the voices of others influence my voice. That's one. I think the second non-negotiable is that I will not give up my curiosity for life. And the days I find that I'm getting a little non-curious, I know that there'll be days that I'll be lazy, there'll be days that I'll be passive, but I feel very uncomfortable with myself if I'm low energy. So I feel that to live life in a full embrace is the way that I want to live life. And I think the third is to not be judgmental.
Is it possible?
You do not know what another person is going through. You do not know. There are certain things about which I'll always be judgmental, like how somebody treats women.
Yes.
How somebody talks to people who are
elderly
or not as privileged as them.
Yes.
But in a general way, when we get up and say, oh, how could you? We don't know what makes anybody do the things they do. And if there's one thing life has taught me, it's that you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. So be empathetic.
Great takeaways. If there was just one single thing that you could tell everyone in the universe, what would that one thing be?
Life is short, be yourself.
Beautiful. That's it, as simple as that.
As simple as that.
Barkha, can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much.
An absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Sitting here, I can feel the warmth, and I know why everyone talks about you being so affable, because you are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really loved it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.